Bear Cub was surrounded by a swarm of killer bees. What this baby did was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The late afternoon sun painted golden stripes across the wooden floor of the cottage. Little Silas Mitchell, barely 10 months old, sat on the soft rug near the open window. His chubby fingers wrapped around a smooth wooden rattle, shaking it with pure joy. The sound mixed with the distant hum of summer insects and the whisper of wind through tall grass. His mother, Clara, stood at the kitchen sink, humming softly as she washed fresh strawberries from their garden. The scent of wild honeysuckle drifted through the window, mixing with the sweet smell of berries. Everything felt peaceful. Everything felt safe. But peace never lasts forever in the wilderness. Outside, beyond the split-rail fence that marked their property, a young bear cub wandered through the meadow. His dark fur caught the sunlight as he chased after a white butterfly. The cub was small, maybe 4 months old, with patches of lighter brown around his ears. He tumbled through the grass, rolling and playing without care. His mother was nowhere near. She had left him to explore while she searched for food deeper in the forest. The cub didn't worry. He felt safe in the warm afternoon sun. Silas heard the cub before he saw him. A soft grunt, then a playful growl as the little bear pounced on a grasshopper. The baby pressed his face against the screen, his blue eyes growing wide with wonder. He had never seen anything like this creature before. The rattle dropped from his hands, rolling across the floor with a hollow sound. Clara glanced over her shoulder. "What is it, sweetie?" She dried her hands on her apron, stepping toward the window. But before she could reach it, something changed in the air. A different sound began. Low at first, like the hum of a distant engine, then louder, angrier. The bear cub stopped playing. His round ears twitched, turning toward the old oak tree at the edge of the meadow. The massive trunk had a dark hollow near its base. Something lived inside that hollow. Something that should never be disturbed. The butterfly forgotten, the cub took a curious step toward the tree. Then another. His small paws crushed the dry grass, making soft crackling sounds. He sniffed the air, catching a strange, sweet scent coming from the hollow. The buzzing grew louder. Silas pressed his tiny palms against the window screen. His breathing fogged the glass as he watched the cub approach the tree. Something felt wrong. Even at 10 months old, he sensed danger in that angry sound. Clara noticed it too, the change in the air, the sudden tension. She moved quickly to the window, looking out just as the first bee emerged from the hollow. It wasn't just any bee, it was larger than normal, with distinctive orange markings on its abdomen. An Africanized honeybee, what people called a killer bee. 1 became 2. 2 became 10, 10 became 50. They poured from the hollow like a dark cloud, their wings creating a sound that made Clara's blood run cold. The cub, startled by the sudden explosion of movement, stumbled backward, but it was too late. The swarm descended on him with terrifying speed. The cub's playful grunts turned to cries of pain and fear. He swatted at the air with his small paws, spinning in circles as the bees attacked. They dove at his face, his ears, any exposed skin they could find. The sound was overwhelming, thousands of wings beating in unified anger. Clara gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. She had heard stories about these bees, how they defended their territory with deadly persistence, how they would chase their targets for miles. Silas began to cry. Not the normal cry of a hungry or tired baby, but something deeper, a sound of distress that seemed to echo the cub's pain. He banged his small fists against the window, tears streaming down his round cheeks. The bear cub stumbled and fell, rolling in the grass as he tried to escape the relentless assault. His fur provided some protection, but the bees found every vulnerable spot. They stung his nose, his paw pads, the tender skin around his eyes. "Oh, God," Clara whispered. She knew she should keep Silas away from the window, but she couldn't move. The scene held her frozen with a mixture of horror and helpless sympathy. The cub managed to get back on his feet, shaking his head violently. Some bees fell away, but more took their place. The swarm seemed endless, pouring from the hollow in waves of buzzing fury. That's when Silas did something that made Clara's heart stop. The baby turned from the window and began crawling toward the open door. Not the clumsy, uncertain crawl of a child learning to move, but with sudden purpose. His tiny hands slapped against the floor as he headed for the door that led to the side porch. "Silas, no!" Clara lunged forward, but her wet hand slipped on the counter. She caught herself. Precious seconds lost. The baby reached the doorway. The screen door wasn't latched properly. It never was in summer. With surprising strength, Silas pushed against it. The door swung open with a soft creak. Outside, the bear cub's cries grew weaker. He had collapsed again, his small body trembling as the bees continued their assault. The angry cloud swirled around him, a living tornado of wings and stingers. Clara ran toward her son, but Silas was already on the porch. He paused at the top of the wooden steps, his blue eyes fixed on the suffering cub. Then he opened his mouth and let out a sound unlike anything Clara had ever heard from him before. It wasn't quite a cry. It wasn't quite a scream. It was something primal, something that seemed to come from a place deeper than his 10-month-old throat should possess. The sound cut through the air like a blade, sharp and clear and impossible to ignore. For a moment, just a moment, the buzzing faltered. Some of the bees broke away from the cub, hovering in confusion. The swarm's unified attack wavered, their flight patterns becoming erratic. The cub lifted his head, blinking through swollen eyes at the small human child on the porch. Clara reached for Silas, her fingers just brushing his cotton onesie, but the baby was already moving again, sliding down the first step on his bottom, then the second. His eyes never left the bear cub. The swarm began to reform, their confusion fading back into anger. But something had changed. Their movements seemed less coordinated, less certain. Some bees continued attacking the cub while others circled aimlessly, as if they had lost their target. Silas reached the bottom step. The grass stretched before him, 20 feet of open ground between him and the suffering cub. 20 feet that might as well have been 20 miles for a crawling baby. But Silas didn't hesitate. He dropped to his hands and knees and began moving forward, his pudgy limbs working with determined purpose. Clara's paralysis broke. She leaped down the steps, her bare feet hitting the grass just as Silas cleared the first few feet. But as she reached for him, something made her pause. The bees were pulling back. Not all of them, not completely, but the swarm's attack was losing its intensity. They rose higher in the air, their buzzing taking on a different quality. Confused, uncertain. The bear cub struggled to his feet one more time. His face was swollen, his movements unsteady. But his dark eyes found Silas crawling toward him through the grass. The cub took a stumbling step forward. They met in the middle of the yard. A baby and a bear cub, both so small in the vast meadow. Silas reached out with one chubby hand, his fingers brushing the cub's fur. The touch was gentle, careful, as if he understood the cub's pain. The remaining bees circled overhead, their anger seeming to drain away. They buzzed in tighter and tighter circles, as if trying to understand what had changed. why their target no longer seemed like a threat. Clara stood frozen on the grass, her heart racing. Every instinct told her to grab her son and run, but something held her in place. Something in the way Silas touched the injured cub, in the way the cub leaned into that touch despite his pain. Then she heard it, a sound that made her blood turn to ice. From the forest came a low, rumbling growl. Not the playful sound of a cub, but the deep, threatening sound of an adult bear, a mother bear. The cub's mother had returned. The massive brown bear emerged from the tree line like a living shadow. Her fur rippled with each powerful step, muscles bunching beneath the thick coat. She was enormous, at least 600 pounds of protective fury. Her eyes, small and dark, fixed on the scene before her. Her cub, swollen and injured, sitting next to a human baby in the middle of the meadow. Clara's legs turned to water. She knew she should grab Silas, should run, but her body wouldn't obey. The mother bear's lips pulled back, revealing yellow teeth as long as Clara's fingers. A deeper growl rumbled from her chest, a sound that seemed to vibrate through the earth itself. The killer bees, still circling overhead, suddenly scattered. Even they recognized a more dangerous predator had arrived. They retreated toward their hollow in the oak tree, their angry buzzing fading to a distant hum. But Silas didn't seem to notice the danger. He sat in the grass, one small hand still resting on the cub's fur. The injured cub whimpered, torn between running to his mother and staying with this strange, gentle creature who had somehow stopped his pain. The mother bear took another step forward, then another. Her massive paws left deep impressions in the soft earth. Clara could see the rage in her eyes, the primal need to protect her baby from any threat. And right now, that threat was a 10-month-old human child. "Silas," Clara whispered, her voice barely audible. She took a tiny step forward, then stopped as the bear's head swung toward her. Those dark eyes promised death if she moved again. The bear was only 15 feet away now, close enough that Clara could smell her, a wild, musky scent mixed with pine sap and earth. Close enough to see the scars on her muzzle from old battles. Close enough to know that one swipe of those massive paws would end everything. Silas finally looked up. His blue eyes met the bear's dark ones, and something passed between them. Something Clara couldn't understand. The baby didn't cry, didn't try to crawl away. Instead, he did something that made Clara's heart stop completely. He smiled. Not just any smile. The pure, innocent smile of a baby who sees something wonderful. His whole face lit up as he raised both arms toward the massive bear, the same gesture he made when he wanted Clara to pick him up. The mother bear stopped. Her growl caught in her throat, becoming something else. A confused rumble, almost like a question. She tilted her massive head, studying this tiny human who showed no fear. The injured cub made a soft sound, something between a whine and a purr. He pressed closer to Silas, as if trying to show his mother that this small creature was safe, that he was a friend. Clara held her breath. The moment stretched like a taut wire, ready to snap at any second. One wrong move, one sudden sound, and it would all be over. Then Silas began to babble, not crying, not screaming, but the happy, nonsensical sounds he made when he played with his toys. He patted the cub's fur with one hand, while reaching toward the mother bear with the other. His voice rose and fell in a sing-song pattern, like he was trying to tell them both a very important story. The mother bear's ears twitched. She lowered her massive head, sniffing the air around Silas. Her black nose was inches from his outstretched hand. Clara bit her lip to keep from screaming, but the bear didn't attack. Instead, she made a soft chuffing sound, almost like a sigh. Her rigid posture relaxed slightly, though her eyes remained watchful. She could smell her cub on this strange little creature, could see that he wasn't hurt beyond the bee stings. The cub struggled to his feet, wobbling on unsteady legs. His face was still swollen, his movements painful, but he managed to stumble toward his mother. The bear immediately began inspecting him, her rough tongue cleaning the worst of the stings. Silas watched with fascination. He clapped his hands together, laughing at the sight. The sound should have startled the bears, should have triggered their flight response. Instead, the mother bear glanced at him with something almost like curiosity. That's when Clara heard the truck, the rumble of an engine coming up their long driveway. She recognized the sound, their neighbor, Marcus Donnelly, who lived 2 miles down the mountain road. He often stopped by to check on them, since Clara's husband worked long hours in town. The mother bear heard it too. Her head snapped up, ears rotating toward the sound. Her peaceful demeanor vanished instantly, replaced by alertness. She nudged her cub with her massive head, pushing him away from Silas. "No," Clara breathed. She knew what would happen next. Marcus would come around the corner, see the bears, and panic. He always carried a rifle in his truck, always talked about protecting the neighborhood from dangerous wildlife. The truck grew louder. Clara could see dust rising above the trees where the driveway curved. In seconds, Marcus would be here. And when he saw a massive bear near a baby, Clara made a decision. Moving slowly, carefully, she began to inch toward Silas. The mother bear watched her but didn't growl. Maybe she understood that Clara was another mother, just trying to protect her young. "It's okay," Clara whispered, though she wasn't sure if she was talking to the bear or herself. "We're not going to hurt you. We're not going to hurt your baby." She reached Silas just as Marcus's red pickup rounded the corner. Clara scooped her son into her arms, holding him tight against her chest. But she didn't run. Running would trigger the bear's chase instinct. Instead, she stood perfectly still, Silas babbling happily in her arms. The truck skidded to a stop. Through the windshield, Clara could see Marcus's eyes go wide. His hand moved toward the gun rack behind his seat. "Don't!" Clara shouted. "Marcus, don't move." But it was too late. Marcus was already out of the truck, rifle in hand. The mother bear spun toward this new threat, a roar erupting from her throat that made the previous growls sound like whispers. "Get inside," Marcus yelled, raising the rifle. "Take the baby and get inside." Everything happened so fast. The mother bear charged, not at Clara and Silas, but at Marcus. 400 pounds of muscle and fury racing across the yard. The cub bleated in fear, stumbling after his mother. Marcus's finger found the trigger. The rifle swung up, the barrel tracking the charging bear. Clara could see it all playing out, the shot, the bear falling, the cub left orphaned, just like a dozen other stories from these mountains. "No!" The word tore from Clara's throat. But it wasn't her voice that stopped Marcus. It was Silas. The baby let out another sound, louder than before. That same primal cry that had confused the bees. But this time it was stronger, more focused. It cut through the air like a physical force, making everyone, human and bear alike, freeze in place. The charging bear skidded to a stop, her massive paws digging furrows in the earth. Marcus's finger froze on the trigger. Even the injured cub stopped moving. His small head tilted as if listening to something beyond human hearing. In the sudden silence, Silas continued to make that sound. It wasn't quite animal, wasn't quite human. It was something in between, something that spoke to a part of the brain older than language. Clara felt it vibrating through her chest where she held him. felt it reaching into places she didn't know existed. The mother bear's aggressive posture melted away. She sat back on her haunches, her massive head swaying slightly as if entranced. The cub limped to her side, pressing against her bulk for comfort. Marcus's arms trembled. The rifle began to lower, inch by inch, as if invisible hands were pushing it down. His face went slack, confusion replacing fear. "What?" he started to say, then stopped. The word seemed to stick in his throat. Silas's cry faded to a soft hum. He turned in Clara's arms, reaching once more toward the bears. This time, Clara didn't try to stop him. She felt caught in whatever spell her son had woven, unable to fight against it even if she wanted to. She took a step forward, then another. Moving like a sleepwalker, she carried Silas back toward the bears. Part of her mind screamed warnings, but a deeper part felt only calm, only certainty that this was right. The mother bear watched them approach. Her dark eyes held no aggression now, only a strange understanding. When Clara stopped a few feet away, the bear did something extraordinary. She lowered her massive head in what looked almost like a boo. Silas giggled, the sound bright and normal after his otherworldly cry. He leaned forward in Clara's arms, his chubby fingers brushing the bear's thick fur. The mother bear held perfectly still, allowing this tiny human to touch her. The cub, emboldened by his mother's acceptance, crept forward. His face was still swollen from the stings, but his eyes were bright with curiosity. He sniffed at Silas's dangling foot, then gave it a gentle lick. "Clara!" Marcus's voice broke through the spell. He stood by his truck, rifle hanging loose in his hands. "What's happening? What is this?" Clara didn't know how to answer. How could she explain that her 10-month-old son had somehow communicated with wild bears? That he had stopped a charging grizzly with nothing but his voice? "I don't know," she said honestly. "But look at them, Marcus. Just look." And he did. They all did. A tableau that shouldn't exist. A mother holding her baby, while wild bears sat peacefully beside them. The late afternoon sun painted everything golden, like a scene from an old fairy tale. The mother bear chuffed softly, then rose to her feet. She nudged her cub, guiding him away from the humans. But there was no urgency in her movements, no fear. She simply turned and began walking back toward the forest, her injured cub limping beside her. Halfway to the trees, she stopped. Her massive head turned back toward them, and for a moment, Clara could swear she saw gratitude in those dark eyes. Then the bears vanished into the shadows, leaving only crushed grass to mark their passing. Marcus lowered his rifle completely. His hands shook as he set it on the truck's hood. "I've lived in these mountains for 40 years, he said slowly. "I've never seen anything like that." Clara shifted Silas to her hip. He yawned, suddenly seeming like a normal, tired baby, as if he hadn't just done something impossible. "Neither have I," she admitted. She looked down at her son, studying his innocent face. "Silas, what are you?" But the baby just smiled and stuck his thumb in his mouth, his blue eyes already growing heavy with sleep. The bee swarm was completely gone now, retreated to their hollow in the oak tree. The meadow looked peaceful again, as if the afternoon's chaos had been nothing but a dream. But Clara knew better. She had witnessed something extraordinary, something that defied explanation. "Maybe we should get inside," Marcus suggested, still eyeing the forest where the bears had disappeared. "In case they come back." Clara nodded, but she wasn't worried about the bears returning. Something told her they were safe, that whatever connection Silas had forged would protect them. Still, she was exhausted, drained by the emotion of the past hour. As she turned toward the house, Marcus called out, "Clara, wait, should we Should we tell anyone about this?" She paused, considering. Who would believe them? A baby who could control killer bees and calm wild bears. It sounded like the plot of a bad movie. No, she decided. Not yet. Not until we understand what happened. Marcus nodded slowly. Probably wise, but Clara, that boy of yours, he's special, different. Clara held Silas a little tighter. "I know," she whispered. "I just don't know what it means." As they walked back to the cottage, Clara's mind raced. She thought about all the little things she'd noticed but dismissed. How Silas never cried when other babies would. How animals always seemed drawn to him. How sometimes, when he was very quiet, she felt like he was listening to something she couldn't hear. There had been that incident at the park last month. An aggressive dog had broken free from its leash, charging at the playground. All the other children screamed and ran, but Silas had just sat in his stroller watching. The dog had skidded to a stop right in front of him, then sat down and wagged its tail. The owner had been baffled, insisting his dog never acted that way with strangers, and before that, at her sister's house. Her sister kept parakeets, nervous little birds that hated being handled, but they would perch on Silas's crib, singing softly while he slept. Her sister joked that Silas was like a Disney princess, attracting woodland creatures. It wasn't a joke anymore. Clara reached the porch steps and paused. Through the window, she could see the living room where Silas had been playing just an hour ago. His wooden rattle still lay on the floor where he'd dropped it. Such a normal scene, in such a normal house. But nothing would be normal again. She climbed the steps slowly, each one feeling like a transition to a different world. A world where babies could commune with animals, where the laws of nature bent to accommodate something beyond understanding. Behind her, Marcus started his truck. "I'll come by tomorrow," he called. "Check on you both." Clara waved acknowledgement but didn't turn around. She was looking at Silas, really looking at him. His round cheeks, his button nose, his impossibly blue eyes. He looked like any other baby, but he wasn't. "What are you?" she whispered again. Silas just yawned wider, snuggling against her shoulder. Whatever he was, whatever gift or curse he carried, he was still her baby, her son, and she would protect him, even if she didn't understand him. As she opened the door, a thought struck her. The bears would be back. Not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but they would return. Because whatever had happened in the meadow, whatever connection Silas had forged, it wasn't finished. It was just beginning. Inside the cottage, everything looked exactly as she'd left it. The strawberries still sat in the sink, half-washed. Her apron hung on its hook. The afternoon sun still slanted through the windows, painting familiar patterns on the floor. But Clara felt like she was seeing it all with new eyes. This wasn't just a cottage anymore. It was a sanctuary, a place where impossible things happened, where the line between human and animal blurred until it disappeared entirely. She carried Silas to his nursery, her footsteps echoing in the quiet house. As she laid him in his crib, he opened his eyes one more time. For just a second, Clara could have sworn they flashed a different color, not blue, but golden, like the eyes of a bear. Then he blinked, and they were blue again. Normal baby blue. "Sleep tight, my little mystery," she whispered, pulling a blanket up to his chin. As she turned to leave, she noticed something outside the nursery window. There, at the edge of the forest, two shapes sat watching the house. A large bear and a smaller one, just visible in the growing dusk. Standing guard, saying goodbye? Clara didn't know, but as she watched, the mother bear stood and gently nudged her cub back into the forest. Before they disappeared completely, the cub looked back one more time. and Clara could have sworn he was looking directly at Silas's window. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the afternoon's events over and over. Her husband, Thomas, wouldn't be home from his construction job until morning. He worked night shifts at the new hotel being built in town, 30 miles down the mountain. She had tried calling him, but there was no cell service at the site. She was alone with her thoughts, and with Silas. Every small sound made her jump. The creak of settling wood became footsteps. The whisper of wind became growls. Twice she got up to check on Silas, finding him sleeping peacefully each time. But even his peaceful face couldn't calm her racing mind. It was just past midnight when she heard it. A soft scratching at the back door. Not loud, not aggressive. Just a gentle scrape, 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 like something trying to get her attention. Clara sat up, heart hammering. The sound came again. Scrape, scrape, scrape. She slipped out of bed, bare feet silent on the cold floor. The hallway stretched before her, darker than it should be. The scratching continued, patient and persistent. In the nursery, Silas began to stir, not crying, but making soft cooing sounds, happy sounds, like he was greeting an old friend. Clara grabbed the baseball bat Thomas kept in the bedroom closet. It felt ridiculous in her hands, this thin piece of wood against whatever was outside. But it was better than nothing. She crept down the hall, past Silas's room. Through the door crack, she could see him sitting up in his crib, his silhouette barely visible in the moonlight. He was facing the window, tiny hands gripping the bars. The scratching stopped. Clara reached the kitchen, where the back door led to the small herb garden. Through the glass pane she could see nothing. Just darkness and the faint outline of her rosemary bushes. Then something moved. Not the bears. Something smaller. It emerged from the shadows like smoke given form, a raccoon. But not just any raccoon. This one was ancient, its fur silver-gray with age. One eye was milky white, blind. But the other eye stared at her with an intelligence that made her skin crawl. The raccoon sat on its haunches, one paw raised to the door. It scratched again, that same patient rhythm. Scrape, scrape, scrape. Clara's hand tightened on the bat. Raccoons were common here, but they were also unpredictable. And this one was different. The way it looked at her, the deliberate nature of its movements. It wasn't acting like a wild animal. Behind her, Silas giggled. She turned to find him standing in the hallway. Standing. Her 10-month-old son, who had just learned to pull himself up, was now standing unassisted, perfectly balanced on chubby legs. His eyes were fixed on the door, on the raccoon beyond. "Silas?" Clara's voice came out as a whisper. "How did you get out of your crib?" He didn't answer, of course. Instead, he toddled toward the door with steps that were far too steady for a baby his age. Clara moved to stop him, but something held her back. That same strange compulsion she'd felt with the bears. Silas reached the door, his small hand pressed against the glass, directly opposite the raccoon's paw. They stayed like that for a moment, baby and beast, separated by nothing but a thin pane. Then Silas reached for the doorknob. He shouldn't have been able to reach it, shouldn't have been able to turn it. But his arm seemed to stretch, his fingers finding purchase on the metal. The lock clicked open. The door swung inward. The raccoon entered slowly, carefully. Its good eye never left Silas, but there was no aggression in its gaze. Only expectation, purpose. It stopped in the middle of the kitchen and sat down. Silas mimicked the motion, plopping onto his diapered bottom with a soft thump. They faced each other in the moonlight, an impossible conversation beginning. The raccoon chittered softly. Silas babbled in response. Back and forth they went, sounds that meant nothing to Clara but seemed to carry weight between them. The raccoon's blind eye wept slightly, leaving a trail down its grizzled face. Then the raccoon did something that made Clara's blood freeze. It spoke. Not in words exactly, but in sounds that were almost words, syllables that bordered on meaning. And somehow, impossibly, Clara understood. The old ways wake, the sounds seemed to say. The bridge is built. The child who speaks the first language. Silas clapped his hands, delighted. He made his own sounds, that same primal vocalization he'd used with the bears, but softer now, more controlled. Yes, the raccoon's sounds agreed. You remember. You all remember deep in your bones. Before the great forgetting, when all spoke as one. Clara's legs gave out. She slumped against the wall, the baseball bat clattering to the floor. This wasn't real, couldn't be real. Animals didn't speak, babies didn't translate. But the evidence sat before her, impossible to deny. The others will come, the raccoon continued, the awakened ones, those who still hold the memory. The child must be ready. Ready for what? Clara found herself asking. Her voice cracked, but she was past caring about sanity. The raccoon's good eye swiveled to her, the healing, the return, when human and beast remember they are one. Images flashed through Clara's mind. Not her own memories, but something older, ancient. A time when humans lived differently, when the boundary between species was fluid, when communication flowed not through words, but through something deeper. She saw great gatherings in moonlit clearings, humans and animals together, sharing knowledge, sharing purpose. She saw children who could run with wolves, elders who could fly with eagles, a world where the wild and the civilized were not enemies but partners. Then she saw the breaking, the forgetting, the walls that rose between species, the languages that split apart. Thousands of years of separation, of fear, of misunderstanding, and now, somehow, her son was a bridge back to that lost connection. The raccoon stood, shaking itself. Its fur rippled in the moonlight. The bear mother will return with the moon's fullness. Others, too. The child must learn. Learn what? Clara whispered. To be what he is, the speaker, the bridge, the healer of the great wound. With that, the raccoon turned and padded toward the door. It paused at the threshold, looking back one more time. Guard him well, Mother. Dark forces remember too. Not all welcome the healing. Then it was gone, melting back into the shadows as if it had never existed. Silas yawned and rubbed his eyes. Suddenly, he was just a tired baby again, swaying where he sat. Clara scooped him up, her arms trembling. "What are you?" she asked for the third time that day, but now the question carried new weight. Not just what, but why. Not just why, but what it meant for all of them. She carried him back to the nursery, her mind reeling. The raccoon's words echoed in her head. The others will come. Dark forces remember too. What had she and Thomas brought into the world? What ancient compact had been renewed in their son? As she laid Silas in his crib, she noticed something she'd missed before. Faint marks on the window glass. Paw prints, dozens of them. Different sizes, different shapes. Bear, raccoon, deer, fox, owl, as if the entire forest had come to look at her son while he slept. Silas settled into sleep, one small fist curled against his cheek. He looked so normal, so innocent. But Clara now knew better. He was something unprecedented, something that challenged everything she thought she knew about the world. She returned to her bedroom, but didn't even try to sleep. Instead, she sat by the window, watching the forest. And the forest watched back. She could see them now, eyes gleaming in the darkness. Waiting, watching, Protecting? Her phone buzzed. Thomas, finally getting a break. "Hey, honey," his text read. "Everything okay?" "You called earlier?" Clara stared at the screen. How could she possibly explain? "Hey, honey, our son can talk to animals and might be some kind of mystical bridge between species. Oh, and a raccoon delivered a prophetic message in our kitchen." "Everything's fine," she typed back. "Just missing you. See you in the morning." She set the phone aside and pulled a blanket around her shoulders. Dawn was still hours away, but she knew sleep wouldn't come. Too much had changed. Too much was still changing. Outside, an owl hooted, then another, then a third. A conversation in the darkness, spreading through the trees. The news traveling, she realized. The awakening, one is here. The bridge is built. And somewhere, in those same shadows, other things stirred. Things that didn't welcome change. Things that profited from the separation between human and wild. The raccoon's warning echoed. Dark forces remembered too. Clara shivered despite the warm night. She had always thought of their mountain cottage as isolated, safe. Now she realized it sat at the center of something ancient and powerful. A crossroads between worlds that were meant to be one. In his crib, Silas smiled in his sleep. Whatever dreams filled his baby mind, they were peaceful. Clara envied him that peace. Her world had become infinitely stranger and more dangerous in the span of a single day, but also more wonderful. The memory of the bear's grateful eyes, the raccoon's impossible words, the connection that flowed between her son and the wild. It was terrifying, yes, but also miraculous. The first pale light of dawn touched the mountains. Night creatures retreated, day animals emerged. The eternal cycle continuing, but somehow different now, charged with new possibility. Clara heard Thomas's truck coming up the drive earlier than usual. She rushed to meet him at the door, suddenly desperate for his solid, rational presence. Someone who would either confirm her sanity or share her madness. He looked tired as he climbed from the cab, his construction clothes dusty and worn. But his face lit up when he saw her. "You're up early," he said, pulling her into a hug. "Bad night?" "You could say that." Clara breathed in his familiar scent, sawdust and sweat and that cologne she'd bought him last Christmas. "Thomas, something happened yesterday, something impossible." His expression shifted to concern. "Is Silas okay?" "He's fine. He's more than fine. She paused, searching for words. "I need you to listen with an open mind, really open. Because what I'm about to tell you is going to sound insane." Thomas studied her face. They'd been together 10 years, married for 5. He knew her tells, knew when she was joking or exaggerating. This wasn't either. "Okay," he said slowly. "Let's go inside. Make some coffee, and you can tell me everything." As they walked to the kitchen, Clara noticed the muddy paw prints on the floor. Evidence of the raccoon's visit. Proof she wasn't completely crazy. "It started with the bees," she began, filling the coffee pot, "and the bear cub." She told him everything, the attack, Silas's intervention, the mother bear's arrival, Marcus and his rifle, the raccoon and its message, the eyes in the forest. By the time she finished, the coffee was cold, and Thomas's expression had gone from skeptical to stunned to something approaching belief. "Show me," he said finally. Clara led him to the nursery. Silas was awake, sitting up in his crib, playing with his toes. He looked up at his father with those bright blue eyes and giggled. "Watch," Clara whispered. She lifted Silas out and set him on the floor. Without hesitation, he stood. Not the wobbly, uncertain stance of a baby learning to walk, but steady and sure. He took 3 steps toward the window, then pressed his palms against the glass. Outside, as if summoned, a deer stepped from the tree line, then another. A whole family, doe, buck, and 2 spotted fawns. They approached the window, ears forward, unafraid. Silas made that sound. The one that wasn't quite human, wasn't quite animal. The deer responded with soft bleats, their heads bobbing in what looked like acknowledgement. Thomas's coffee mug slipped from nerveless fingers, shattering on the floor. Neither parent moved to clean it up. They were transfixed by the scene before them. "My God," Thomas breathed. "How is this possible?" "I don't know." Clara slipped her hand into his. "But it's real. And according to that raccoon, it's just the beginning." As if in confirmation, a shadow passed over the window. They looked up to see an eagle circling overhead, its cry piercing the morning air. Then another bird joined it, then another. Soon the sky was full of wings. Eagles, hawks, crows, even tiny songbirds, all circling their cottage, all calling in their different voices. But somehow it sounded like the same song. Silas raised his arms, laughing with pure joy. And in that moment Clara understood. This wasn't just about her son, it was about all of them. Every human who had forgotten how to hear the wild's voice. Every animal who had learned to fear human footsteps. The healing the raccoon spoke of. It wasn't just for Silas to perform, it was for all of them to receive. To remember what they had lost. To rebuild what had been broken. But first they had to survive whatever dark forces opposed this reunion. The raccoon's warning hung heavy in the air, a promise of trials to come. Thomas squeezed her hand. "Whatever this is," he said quietly, "we'll face it together, as a family." Clara nodded, tears streaming down her face. Not tears of fear anymore, but of wonder, of possibility. Their son was a miracle she didn't understand, a bridge to a world she'd never imagined. But he was still their son, and they would protect him, guide him, love him through whatever came next, even if it meant rewriting everything they thought they knew about the world, even if it meant standing between him and forces they couldn't yet comprehend, even if it meant watching him become something beyond their wildest dreams. The birds continued their aerial dance, their songs blending into something that almost sounded like words. And in his father's arms, Silas sang back, his baby voice joining the chorus of the wild. The awakening had begun. That morning changed everything. Thomas called his boss, claiming a family emergency. It wasn't a lie, this was the very definition of an emergency, even if no one would believe the truth. Clara canceled her work-from-home meetings. The normal world would have to wait. They sat at the kitchen table, Silas in his high chair between them, cheerfully mashing banana with his tiny fists. Such a normal scene, except for the golden eagle perched on their deck railing, watching through the sliding glass door. "We need to understand what's happening," Thomas said, his engineer's mind trying to process the impossible. "There has to be some explanation, some logic to this." Clara shook her head. "I don't think logic applies here. This is something older than logic." The eagle tapped the glass with its beak. 3 slow, deliberate taps. Like knocking. Thomas and Clara exchanged glances. Without a word, Thomas stood and slid the door open. The eagle hopped inside, its talons clicking on the linoleum. Up close, it was magnificent and massive. Its head nearly reached Thomas's chest. Silas squealed with delight, banana forgotten. He reached toward the bird with sticky hands. The eagle lowered its proud head, allowing the baby to pat its golden feathers. Then, like the raccoon, it began to make sounds. Not eagle cries, but something more complex. Layered, and again, impossibly, the meanings pressed themselves into Clara's mind. Storm coming, not sky storm, man storm, they know the bridge child lives. Who knows? Thomas asked, his voice strained. Who are they? The eagle's fierce yellow eyes fixed on him, the severed ones, those who profit from the broken bond. They come with false fire and trapped lightning. Clara translated without thinking. Guns and tasers? The eagle bobbed its head. 3 sunrises, maybe 4. The forest prepares, but may not be enough. Bridge child must be hidden, or stronger. Stronger how? Clara leaned forward. He's just a baby. Not just baby, bridge child, speaker of first words, but young, untrained, vulnerable. The eagle rustled its wings. Unless it turned to stare out the window, toward the mountains. Unless he meets the old mothers. Thomas rubbed his temples. I'm sorry, but can we pause for a moment? Am I really having a conversation with an eagle about old mothers and bridge children? When did our life become a fantasy novel? The eagle swiveled its head toward him with what could only be described as annoyance. Man-thinking. Always needing categories. Real, not real. Possible, impossible. You forgot the true real, the always was. Silas laughed and clapped, banana smearing across his face. He made his sound again, the one that seemed to bypass normal hearing. The eagle responded with a softer cry, almost affectionate. The old mothers, Clara prompted. Who are they? The first awakened, bear mother of the high caves, wolf mother of the deep valleys, elk mother of the wide meadows. They remember all. They can teach. Make bridge child strong before the severed ones come. And where do we find them? The eagle walked to the window, its movements oddly dignified despite the waddle necessary on flat ground. Follow the sunset path, where 3 waters meet before the moon grows dark. They wait. With that, it spread its wings. Thomas barely got the door open in time before the eagle launched itself into the sky, spiraling upward until it was just a speck against the blue. 3 waters, Thomas muttered. Sunset path? Why can't mystical prophecies ever include GPS coordinates? Despite everything, Clara laughed. It was slightly hysterical, but it felt good. I think I know where it means. There's a place about 10 miles up the mountain where 3 streams converge. We hiked there last summer, remember? The place with the weird rock formations, where you said you felt like something was watching us? That's the one. Clara lifted Silas from his high chair, automatically wiping his face. Something was watching us. Probably the old mothers. Thomas stood pacing. This is insane. We're talking about taking our baby into the wilderness to meet with, what? Ancient animal spirits? Based on the advice of a talking eagle? Clara set Silas on the floor. He immediately walked to the window and pressed his hands against it. Outside, the deer family from earlier had returned, now joined by rabbits, a fox, and what looked like a badger. Look at them, Thomas, she said softly. They're protecting him, guarding him. Whatever this is, however impossible it seems, it's real. And if there are really people coming to hurt our son, she didn't need to finish. Thomas's expression hardened. Then we do whatever it takes to keep him safe, even if it means hiking up a mountain to meet mystical bear mothers. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Thomas loaded their large camping backpack with supplies while Clara gathered Silas's things. It felt surreal, packing diapers and baby food alongside emergency flares and a first aid kit. Silas was no help, constantly wandering to the windows to talk with the gathering animals. By afternoon, their yard looked like a Disney movie. Deer, rabbits, foxes, raccoons, even a family of skunks. Birds lined every tree branch and fence post. It's like they're all standing guard, Thomas observed, checking his hiking boots. A furry army. As the sun began its descent toward the mountain peaks, they loaded the car. Silas fussed as Clara buckled him into his car seat, the first normal baby behavior he'd shown all day. The drive up the mountain was tense. The logging road was rough, barely more than dirt and gravel. Thomas white-knuckled the steering wheel as they bounced over ruts and around washouts. "There," Clara pointed. "That's the trailhead." Thomas parked and they unloaded. Silas rode in a carrier on Thomas's back, his blue eyes bright with interest. The trail was overgrown, clearly rarely used. But as they walked, Clara noticed something odd. The forest was opening for them. Branches that should have blocked the path were bent aside. Thorny vines had parted like curtains. Even the ground seemed smoother than she remembered, as if invisible hands had cleared the way. "Are you seeing this?" Thomas whispered. Before Clara could answer, a gray wolf stepped onto the trail ahead of them. Thomas froze. Clara's hand found his arm, squeezing tight. The wolf was massive, its yellow eyes ancient and knowing. It stood perfectly still, blocking their path. Then Silas made his sound. The wolf's ears perked forward. It tilted its head, studying the baby with those penetrating eyes. Then, amazingly, it play-bowed, front end low, rear end high, tail wagging. "It wants to play," Clara breathed, "like a dog." The wolf straightened and turned, trotting up the trail. It paused after a few yards, looking back expectantly. "I think we're supposed to follow it," Thomas said, disbelief coloring his voice. They did. The wolf led them deeper into the forest, occasionally pausing to ensure they kept up. Other wolves appeared from the shadows, falling in behind them. Soon they had an escort of 6 wolves, padding silently through the deepening dusk. The sound of water grew louder. They emerged into a clearing where 3 streams converged, forming a small pool. Ancient trees circled the space, their branches weaving together overhead like a natural cathedral. And there, waiting, were the old mothers. The bear was massive, easily twice the size of the mother they'd seen yesterday. Her fur was silver-white with age, and her eyes held depths Clara couldn't fathom. She sat on her haunches near the pool, patient as stone. Beside her stood an elk that belonged in a museum. Its antlers spread like an ancient crown, each point perfect despite what must have been incredible age. Its coat was the color of mist, ethereal in the fading light. The wolf pack's leader, a she-wolf even larger than the male who'd guided them, completed the trinity. Her muzzle was white with years, but her bearing was regal, commanding. Silas made a sound of pure joy. He squirmed in the carrier until Thomas set him down. Without hesitation, the baby toddled toward the massive animals. "Silas, no!" Clara started forward, but the she-wolf moved to block her. Not aggressively, but firmly. The message was clear: let him go. Silas reached the bear first. He barely came up to her knee, but he showed no fear. The bear lowered her enormous head, and Silas patted her nose with his tiny hand. Then something shifted. The air itself seemed to thicken, shimmer. Clara felt pressure in her ears, like diving deep underwater. The clearing filled with a presence that was somehow both ancient and immediate. The old mothers began to speak, not in the almost words of the raccoon and eagle, but in pure meaning that flooded directly into Clara's mind. Thomas gasped beside her. He was hearing it too. "The child comes at the turning time." The bear's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "When the old compact renews or breaks forever. He carries the first voice," the elk added, her tone like wind through leaves, the tongue that was before tongues. "When all was one. But he is young," the wolf observed, unformed, untested. The severed ones move quickly. They fear what he might become. Who are the severed ones? Clara asked, finding her voice. Why do they want to hurt him? Images flooded her mind. Men and women in expensive suits, sitting in boardrooms. Maps covered in red marks. Logging sites, mining claims, development plans. Numbers on screens, profit margins that depended on keeping humans and nature separate. On maintaining the fear, the disconnect. She saw clearer images. A biotech company that made billions from pesticides that only worked because people feared insects. A development corporation that cleared forests by convincing communities that wildlife was dangerous. A media empire built on stories of animal attacks, of nature as enemy. And deeper, darker, government projects she didn't understand. Experiments. Research into communication, into consciousness. Programs shut down when they came too close to rediscovering what Silas now embodied. They profit from the breaking, the bear explained. They rule through separation. If humans remember their kinship with all life, their power crumbles. So they will try to take him, the wolf growled, study him, use him, or destroy him. Over my dead body, Thomas said flatly. The wolf's yellow eyes flicked to him. Perhaps, but better he be strong than you be dead. How? Clara asked. How do we make him strong? He's just a baby. The three old mothers exchanged looks that seemed to hold entire conversations. Then the bear rose onto all fours. Despite her age, the movement was fluid, powerful. We wake what already sleeps within. We teach what he already knows. We make the bridge child into the bridge. She approached Silas, who giggled and reached up toward her. The bear touched her nose to his forehead. Light exploded behind Clara's eyes. She was elsewhere, everywhere. She was the eagle soaring over mountains, the wolf running through moonlit forests, the bear fishing in crystal streams. She was every animal at once, experiencing the world through 1,000 different senses. And through it all she heard the song, the first song, the one that connected all living things before words divided them. The vision faded. Clara found herself on her knees in the dirt, tears streaming down her face. Thomas knelt beside her, his expression stunned. Silas stood in the center of the clearing, glowing. Not metaphorically, actually glowing. Soft golden light emanated from his skin, pulsing with his heartbeat. His eyes had changed, still blue, but now flecked with gold, with green, with every color found in nature. The old mothers stepped back, their work complete, but Clara could see the cost. The bear's shoulders sagged, the elk's legs trembled, the wolf's breathing was labored. We have given what we can, the bear said, her mental voice weaker now. The child holds the gift, but gifts must be earned. Trials must be faced. What trials? Thomas asked. What's coming? The wolf lifted her muzzle to the darkening sky. Steel and fire, fear and hatred. Those who would break the world rather than see it healed. They come with the dawn, perhaps sooner. As if summoned by her words, a sound echoed through the forest. Not animal, mechanical. The distant thrum of helicopter rotors. The old mothers' heads snapped up in unison. The wolf pack began to pace. Hackles raised. The clearing's peaceful atmosphere shattered like glass. Too soon, the elk breathed. They move faster than expected. What do we do? Clara scooped up Silas, his glow fading but not disappearing entirely. Where do we go? Down is death, the bear said urgently. They control the valleys, the roads. Up is hope. The high places, remember. The old sanctuaries remain. She lumbered to the edge of the clearing, where the mountain rose steeply above. Follow the star path. Find the cave of first words. There, perhaps, the child can grow strong enough. The helicopter sound grew louder. Now, Clara could see lights through the trees, sweeping search beams that turned the forest into a chaos of shadows. "Go," the wolf snarled. "We will buy time. Delay them, but go now." Thomas hoisted the pack while Clara clutched Silas. The old mothers were already moving, the bear crashing through underbrush, the elk leaping impossible distances, the wolves melting into shadows. "This way," Thomas pointed to what might have been a game trail. "I think I see it." They ran. Up the mountain, following a path that seemed to form beneath their feet. Behind them, the helicopter sounds multiplied. Clara heard dogs baying, men shouting. Gunfire cracked through the night. Silas was silent in her arms, but his eyes glowed in the darkness. And strangest of all, he was helping. Clara felt lighter, stronger. Her feet found perfect purchase on loose stone. Tree branches bent away before she could run into them. Higher, a voice whispered in her mind. Not the old mothers, something else. The mountain itself? Higher. The old sanctuary, the first cave, higher. They climbed. Thomas led the way, somehow seeing a path that shouldn't exist. The sounds of pursuit faded, replaced by wind and their own labored breathing. Then, through a break in the trees, Clara saw their destination. The cave mouth yawned like a gateway to another world. Ancient petroglyphs covered the surrounding rocks, spirals and animal figures and symbols that hurt to look at directly. Power radiated from the opening, old and wild and utterly inhuman. "In there?" Thomas panted. "We're taking our baby into that?" Another gunshot, closer now. A wolf's howl cut off abruptly. Clara's heart clenched, thinking of the old mothers buying time with their lives. "We don't have a choice," she said. They plunged into the darkness just as the first flashlight beams swept across the rocks behind them. The cave swallowed them, its throat black and forbidding. But Silas began to glow brighter, his light revealing ancient paintings on the walls, animals and humans dancing together, speaking the same language, sharing the same world, the first sanctuary, the place where it all began. And perhaps, Clara thought as they fled deeper into the earth, where it would begin again. The cave tunnel seemed to pulse with Silas's light, each flicker revealing more ancient paintings, animals emerging from human forms, humans sprouting wings, antlers, fur. The story of unity, separation, and the promise of return. They ran until the passage opened into a vast chamber. Clara gasped. The ceiling soared impossibly high, covered in crystals that caught and amplified Silas's glow. In the center stood something that made her mind reel. A tree, growing in solid rock, in perfect darkness, impossibly alive. Its silver bark pulsed with the same light that emanated from her sun. Its branches held leaves of gold, copper, emerald, every shade found in autumn forests. "The world tree," Thomas breathed. "It's real." Silas squirmed in Clara's arms, reaching toward the tree with both hands. She set him down, and he toddled forward, his own light growing brighter with each step. Behind them, shouts echoed through the tunnel. Their pursuers had found the cave. "End of the line," a harsh voice called. "Bring out the child. No one needs to get hurt." Thomas stepped protectively in front of his family. "Stay back!" Footsteps approached. Clara saw flashlight beams dancing on the tunnel walls. Soon they'd be surrounded, trapped. But Silas had reached the tree. He placed his tiny palms against the silver bark, and the world exploded. Not with violence, but with memory. Clara was no longer in the cave. She stood in a primordial forest, watching the first humans learn speech from the animals, She saw civilizations rise where humans and beasts worked as one. She witnessed the great breaking, when fear replaced wonder, when walls rose between species, and she saw the prophecy. Every few centuries a bridge child would be born, one who could heal the wound, but each time the severed ones found them, destroyed them, kept the profitable separation intact. Until now. The vision shifted. She saw Silas not as he was, but as he could be. A young man standing between worlds, translating the songs of whales to prevent oceanic destruction. A leader teaching humanity to hear the warnings of bees before ecological collapse. A bridge across which all life could communicate, cooperate, survive. If he lived past tonight. The vision shattered as armed figures burst into the chamber, soldiers in black tactical gear, weapons raised. But they stopped short, weapons wavering, as they saw what stood before them. The tree blazed with light, and Silas blazed with it. But more than that, the cave was no longer empty. Every animal from the forest had come. They materialized from the walls themselves, stepping out of the ancient paintings. The bear Mother Clara had first met, wounds healing as she emerged from stone. The wolves, no longer dead but transformed. Eagles, deer, foxes, even the ancient raccoon, all surrounding Silas in the tree. But these weren't ordinary animals anymore. They were something between flesh and spirit, real and mythic. Their eyes held human intelligence, animal wisdom, and something older than both. "Impossible," the lead soldier muttered, his weapon shaking. That's when the old mothers appeared. Not dead, as Clara had feared, but transformed like the others. The ancient bear, elk, and wolf stepped from the cave walls, but now they stood upright, spoke with voices that were both animal and human. "Lower your weapons," the bear mother commanded, her voice echoing with age and authority. "You stand in the first sanctuary. Violence here would curse you beyond mortal understanding." Some soldiers obeyed immediately, overcome by the presence of the old mothers. Others looked to their leader, a woman with cold eyes who hadn't lowered her rifle. "Nice light show," she said, "but that child is coming with us. We have people who need to study what he is for the safety of everyone." "Safety?" The wolf mother laughed, a sound like wind through dead leaves. "You mean profit, control, the power that comes from keeping humans afraid of the wild." "The old ways are dead," the woman insisted. "This is the modern world. We don't need fairy tales, we need order." That's when Silas spoke. Not baby babble, not the primal sound he'd made before. Real words in a voice that belonged to no child. The old ways never died, they only slept, waiting for someone to wake them. Waiting for humans to remember they are nature too. Every crystal in the cave rang like a bell. The tree's light pulsed with each word, and something fundamental shifted in the world. Clara felt it first, a loosening of some invisible bond, the barrier between human and animal, between civilized and wild, growing thin. Through the cave entrance, she heard it happening everywhere. Dogs speaking to their owners, cats sharing ancient secrets, birds warning of storms in words humans could understand. The soldiers staggered as the change hit them. Some laughed with wonder. Others wept. The cold-eyed woman fought longest, but even she eventually lowered her weapon, her face transforming as she heard, really heard, the natural world for the first time. "My God," she whispered, "what have we been doing? What have we been missing?